Some of SpongeBob's weirdest moments barely made it on air, and some you were never meant to see at all. Some of these scenes aired once, some never aired at all. And some were so strange, fans only found them years later, pieced together from old animation cells, storyboards, or some weird DVD your cousin swore he still had. But here's the part that really gets me. It's not just that these scenes were cut, it's why they were cut, and what that says about SpongeBob and the people behind it. Because when you look at what doesn't make it on screen, the stuff Nickelodeon quietly edits out, you start to see another side of the show. A side that's weirder, messier, and sometimes way more honest than the version we grew up with. So to understand it better, we're diving into the scenes Nickelodeon didn't want you to see. And by the end, you might be asking yourself, was SpongeBob always this dark? Or did they just try to scrub that part clean? Let's start with the kind of scenes you did see back in the days, but not anymore. Not every cut scene from SpongeBob is shocking. Some of them are subtle, barely noticeable. And that's what makes them interesting. Because when you look at them closely, the reasons start to get strange. There's a reason procrastination is one of the most relatable episodes in SpongeBob's entire run. It's just painfully accurate. SpongeBob has a simple task: write an essay for boating school. But instead, he falls down a rabbit hole of distractions, imaginary emergencies, and full-blown existential spirals. Which, let's be honest, is exactly how most of us treat deadlines. But if you caught the original airing back in the early 2000s, you saw something else. But what you might not know is, this already chaotic episode originally had even more scenes that made things weirder. 3 deleted moments, quietly scrubbed from the airwaves in 2006, and only restored more than a decade later. The first one, SpongeBob looks out the window and sees Patrick rubbing lotion on Sandy's back, while he calls out, "Come on, SpongeBob!" Now, depending on your reading of the scene, it's either a harmless beach moment or something that made Nickelodeon's Standards and Practices team extremely uncomfortable. To be fair, Patrick's expression doesn't help. He looks like he's committing a crime. Scene 2, SpongeBob, desperate to avoid writing, tries exercising. Seems fine, until you realize his nose is bouncing in a way that apparently looked a little too suggestive. Not exactly the legacy you want when animating a kitchen sponge. And finally, the third cut, a car crashes full speed into a brick wall. That's it. Just a blink and you miss it gag. But someone at Nick worried kids might try to reenact it, because when you think easily influenced, obviously the first thing that comes to mind is SpongeBob fans launching vehicles into buildings. All 3 scenes were wiped, without any explanation, just gone. For 13 years, fans thought they were imagining it. Until one day, Nickelodeon quietly brought them back on a Nicktoons rerun like nothing had happened. You wouldn't even notice unless you remembered how it felt, that, wait, did I just see that? But sometimes that's all it takes to get a scene erased. As for the next one, you've probably heard about this. In Just One Bite, Squidward breaks into the Krusty Krab at night because he can't stop thinking about Krabby Patties. And in the original version, he doesn't just sneak in quietly, Squidward got caught in a gasoline trap. Squidward walks in, a bucket tips over, he realizes too late, hey, this isn't water, this is gas. A robotic arm drops a match, cue fireball. Then it happens again, twice. He walks out charred like a cartoon skeleton both times. And for about a year, this version actually aired on TV, uncensored. Until one day, it disappeared. Nickelodeon replaced it with a much simpler version. Squidward walks in, finds the vault, that's it. For years, fans speculated the reason was bad timing. The episode aired in October 2001, barely a month after 9/11. But according to Vincent Waller, one of the show's directors, the real reason was much simpler and weirder. Someone at Nickelodeon apparently just realized, wait, we just showed a kid's character igniting a match over a bucket of gasoline. And yeah, that's kind of hard to explain to the fire marshal. So they replaced it. New version, Squidward walks in, finds the vault. That's it. No fire, no gasoline, no death trap. And here's what makes it so strange. This wasn't even the most violent thing SpongeBob ever aired. The show uses atomic explosions as background noise. Patrick's been turned into ash more times than we can count, but for whatever reason, this was the moment that crossed the line. Was it really about safety? Or was it just one scene too grounded in real danger, too close to something a kid might actually try? Whatever the case, it's one of the rare times where SpongeBob didn't just get censored, he got redacted. As for our next scene, it was more obvious. Most fans remember it as SpongeBob's first Halloween episode. It's got all the early SpongeBob energy, over-the-top costume gags, a little horror, and a lot of chaos. The The whole plot centers on SpongeBob trying way too hard to be scary. So naturally, his plan? He carves off the top half of his body and walks around dressed as the Flying Dutchman. Full brain exposure. Classic SpongeBob logic. If you're gonna go spooky, go surgical. And yeah, it works. He walks into the Krusty Krab and everyone screams in terror. Even the Flying Dutchman is traumatized. But originally, that wasn't the ending. In the version Nickelodeon scrapped, the final moment was supposed to be a close-up of SpongeBob's carved-out head, skin completely gone, brain front and center, and then just fade to black. I guess the initial plan was to give an actual jump scare for the kids at the end scene. I think it was pitched as kind of a joke jump scare, a final boo for the kids before the credits rolled. But someone at the network panicked. It was too much, too graphic, or just too weird. So they added one last line as a safety net. Don't worry, it grows back. Because you can let SpongeBob peel his whole face off as long as you promise it regenerates. But here's the thing, even without the close-up, the scene is still unsettling, and the fact that they even considered ending it that way tells you a lot. It's not gore, not really. It's still silly, still ridiculous, but it taps into that weird early-era SpongeBob instinct, where the show was willing to be awkward, uncomfortable, even a little disturbing. These were just small moments, maybe clumsy, maybe questionable, but honest. They showed a SpongeBob that wasn't perfectly polished, a little awkward, gross, and maybe a little too real. Which makes you wonder, if this was too much for Nickelodeon, what happens when SpongeBob gets even darker? SpongeBob has always loved Krabby Patties, but to love a patty took that love to places we weren't ready for. He falls in love with a burger, he flirts with it, takes it on dates, dines by candlelight, he even names it. It stops being food and becomes his girlfriend. But there was a deleted scene that pushed the joke to its absolute limit. Originally, there was a shot of SpongeBob waking up in bed, in nothing but his underwear, lying next to the same patty. Only this time, the burger had bite marks in it. Yeah, it's as weird as it sounds. Nickelodeon cut the scene for pretty obvious reasons. The implication was a little too suggestive, even by SpongeBob's usual standards. They replaced it with a more innocent picnic gag instead, and that's the version most people saw. But that missing shot says a lot. Not just about SpongeBob's obsession, but what the writers were really playing with here. Because behind the absurdity, there's something uncomfortably honest. He wants love, real connection, and he finds it in something that can't reject him. It's dumb, it's dark, and it's probably one of the most bizarre metaphors for emotional repression Nickelodeon ever let happen. Because for one brief moment, the show wasn't just making a joke about fast food. It was showing us how far SpongeBob would go just to feel loved, even if it meant waking up next to something that was already half-eaten. But of all of the deleted scenes in SpongeBob history, this one might be the most quietly devastating. It happens during Truth or Dare, the big anniversary special with musical numbers, flashbacks, and a fake wedding between SpongeBob and Sandy. It's a joke, part of a play. The audience knows it, the characters know it, until the priest says, "This isn't a real wedding." And SpongeBob, for just a second, drops the act. It doesn't have to be. That's the line. 5 words. And then Sandy slaps him. That moment was fully animated and then deleted, because that one little line broke a rule the show had tiptoed around for years. That maybe SpongeBob isn't as emotionally neutral as he pretends to be. There's more going on under the surface. Under all the goofiness, he does want more. He just didn't know how to say it until that moment slipped out. And Nickelodeon? They hit delete. Not just about SpongeBob's feelings, but about the boundaries they built around his character. He's not supposed to want, he's not supposed to feel. He's supposed to reset by the next episode. No baggage, no growth, no complications. But here, just for a moment, we saw a version of SpongeBob who doesn't reset. This one isn't really funny. It's meant to be a silly disguise, a slapstick chase, a misunderstanding played for laughs. But under all that, this episode hits on something deeper and uglier. In Someone in the Kitchen with Sandy, Plankton steals Sandy's fursuit, leaving her completely exposed in public. In the aired version, she's still got a bra and swimsuit on, but in the original cut, she was meant to be completely naked. Nothing. Just a proud, capable character, stripped of everything that made her feel safe. She walks through town looking for help, and Bikini Bottom points, whispers, mocks. "Look, a naked chipmunk! A nudist ferret! What in Neptune's ocean is that repulsive thing?" It's not really about nudity, it's about shame. The way the joke stops being funny halfway through, but keeps going anyway. Nickelodeon eventually redrew the scenes to add clothing, tried to make it appropriate, but the structure of the episode didn't change. The walk of shame was still there. And unlike most SpongeBob episodes where the weirdness resets by the next morning, this one lingers. And when you look at it that way, this whole thing feels less like a punchline and more like punishment. A moment that shouldn't have been greenlit. And when they realized it, they didn't rewrite it. They just covered it up. But these last few scenes weren't pulled for being too scary or too suggestive or even too gross. They were pulled because they hit something deeper. Moments where SpongeBob stopped being just a cartoon and started asking questions it wasn't supposed to. And yet, even they don't touch what's coming next, because now we're going to look into the ones that didn't just break the rules of kids' TV, they broke the illusion entirely. The moments where SpongeBob gets so dark, so unfiltered, Nickelodeon didn't just trim the scenes, they buried them. Everyone remembers Sailor Mouth, the episode where SpongeBob and Patrick learn how to cuss. They beep every bad word with a dolphin squeak. It's goofy, it's chaotic, and it became an instant classic. But the funniest part? Behind that dolphin sound, the actors actually say the curse words. All of them. And Nickelodeon kept the tapes. For years, it was just a rumor, a weird bit of trivia floating around fan forums, until a few years ago when 2 of those original audio clips were leaked online. And they weren't subtle. Just SpongeBob and Patrick swearing like sailors. And here's where it gets wild. The scream from the uncensored clip, it lasts longer than the one in the finished episode. It matches the pacing, the tone, even the mic quality perfectly. Some fans edited the audio to the actual clips. It's funny, but it kills the illusion. Because in the aired version, it feels like SpongeBob is innocent. He doesn't know what he's saying. But once you hear the uncensored audio, that illusion shatters. And once you hear it, you can't unhear it. Suddenly, this innocent episode becomes something else entirely. It's funny, sure, but it also shows just how close this show constantly skated to the edge. Shanghai is remembered as one of SpongeBob's most iconic episodes. The Flying Dutchman, the magic wishes, Patchy the Pirate hijacking the airwaves. But originally, it wasn't just a special, it was a vote. When it first aired, Nickelodeon let viewers vote for one of 3 endings. You could pick one of 3 outcomes, and the winning choice would air live. Here were your options. Ending 1. SpongeBob gets the wish, asks the Dutchman to be vegetarian, and ends. He wishes the Dutchman was a vegetarian. The Dutchman agrees, and tries to eat them anyway, but now as fruits. It's silly, surreal, and open-ended. This was the version that won the vote and has aired ever since. Ending 2. Patrick gets the wish. He wastes it, wishing for peppermint gum. The Dutchman immediately eats all 3 of them alive. Inside his stomach, you can hear them pleading to be let out. It's grim, their fate is sealed, there's no punchline, just darkness. Ending 3. Squidward gets the wish, asking to never meet those 2 barnacle heads his entire life. The Dutch grants it by erasing their memories of Squidward, and they still get eaten at the end. It's ironic, cruel, and weirdly philosophical. And then the vote was over. SpongeBob's ending won, the other 2 were buried. Now here's where it gets interesting. According to sources, the network decided never to air the other endings again, not because they were confusing, but because they were too dark, especially Patrick's. There's something especially haunting about that version. Patrick accepts his fate, he just sits there, chewing gum, trying to enjoy his last moment. Meanwhile, you hear their voices echoing from inside the Dutchman's stomach. Even Squidward's fate, though played for laughs, ends in erasure. His one selfish wish makes him completely alone and forgotten, then eaten anyway. SpongeBob, for all his naivety, was actually the smartest. He tried to outwit the Dutchman, bending the wish in a way that might save them. He still failed, but it didn't doom them. These endings weren't just gags. They were a weird little experiment, symbolic, eerie, and way more thoughtful than you'd expect from a cartoon. And that's likely why they vanished. Because for a few minutes, SpongeBob let the viewers pick their reality. And 2 of those realities were just a little too real. And then there's Red Mist. It was a fan-made creepypasta, a bootleg horror story about Squidward's mental breakdown and eventual suicide. You probably read it online as a kid, or heard about someone who saw the real episode. It was a myth, a hoax, urban legend. Until 2019, when SpongeBob in Random Land aired. In the middle of that episode, there's a quick cut to an image. Squidward, bloodshot eyes, blank stare, a shadow behind him. It was Red Mist Squidward, frame for frame. For years we thought it was fake, but this was real, and it aired on Nickelodeon. To be fair, Random Land is already unhinged. It's a dimension where the laws of logic don't apply, doors open backwards, sights repeat endlessly, every corner is a visual glitch. And in a place that chaotic, it kinda made sense to throw in a jump scare, one that only true fans would recognize. But once people caught it, Nickelodeon pulled the scene, replaced it with something harmless, baby Squidward giggling in a diaper, which somehow I think is even creepier. And that's what makes this one so bizarre, because Red Mist was never meant to be part of SpongeBob. It was a horror story made by fans, meant to satirize the show's cheery tone. But the creators acknowledged it. They folded it into the fabric of the show, even if it was only for a single frame. And that's the part that sticks with you. Because if that can bleed into a show, even if the darkest, most disturbing fan nightmare can flash on screen, then you have to ask, what else made it through? So, what do we make of all this? When you look at the scenes Nickelodeon cut, the awkward ones, the gross ones, the ones that hit just a little too close to home, a pattern starts to emerge. They weren't just editing for safety, or taste, or even clarity. They were editing emotion. Cutting the parts where SpongeBob gets too sad, too angry, or too attached. The moments where characters stop being cartoonish and start being recognizably human. And that's the part they couldn't air. Because sometimes it's not the gore or the language that crosses the line, it's vulnerability, insecurity. A character admitting they're lonely or ashamed or afraid they'll never be seen the way they want to be. That's what these deleted moments reveal. A version of SpongeBob that wasn't always upbeat, a Bikini Bottom that wasn't always safe, and a show that sometimes said more in what it removed than what it left in. But here's the twist. This wasn't a one-time thing, or even a rare moment of overreach. Because once you start looking at what the show almost said, you realize it's been saying it for years. Which brings us to the last episode we covered, SpongeBob's most racist episode. If you haven't seen it yet, that's the one you really need to watch next. Because as weird as deleted scenes can get,